All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to talk about something that's probably one of the biggest hidden costs on any plant floor, the industrial pump. We're going to break down how one really unique design can totally change the math on your maintenance, your waste, and especially your downtime. So yeah, let's dive in.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about those hidden costs. Then, we're going to break down the three biggest reasons conventional pumps fail: wear, waste, and blockages. After that, we'll get into the Solotech solution and wrap it all up with the real-world numbers, what we're calling the Uptime Payback.
So first up, the hidden cost of pumps. When we buy a pump, we tend to look at the price tag. But honestly, for most industrial pumps, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The real cost, it's like this invisible tax on your productivity, and you pay for it with maintenance hours, wasted materials, and lost production.
Let's just put a number on it right away. What if every single one of your pumps is quietly costing you an extra $3,000 a year? And look, that's not just some made-up number. It's based on the real costs of labor, parts, cleaning up spills, and all those little inefficiencies that almost never make it onto the spreadsheet.
So where does all that money go? Well, that brings us to our first huge failure point, just plain old wear. This is really a death by a thousand cuts problem, you know? It's that chronic, nagging maintenance that happens because a lot of pumps are just, well, they're designed with parts that are meant to break down.
Now take a look at this. The difference here is night and day. On the left, you've got your typical pump, and it's got a whole laundry list of things just waiting to fail. Valves, seals, glands, seats. Each one of those is a potential leak, a future failure, and a reason you've got to stop what you're doing and fix it. But then look at the right. The Solotech design? It's so much simpler. The main things that wear out are just the hose and the lubricant. It's simple. Less to fail means way less to fix.
And the result of that simple design is pretty amazing. Just by getting rid of those common problem parts, the valves and the seals, plants are seeing a 25 to 40% drop in maintenance calls. Think about what that actually means. It means fewer emergencies, less planned downtime, and your team can actually focus on making things better instead of just putting out fires.
So how does Solotech actually do this? Well, a lot of peristaltic pumps use what's called a shoe that basically mashes the hose at a couple of points with every single rotation. And that creates a ton of friction, heat, and fatigue. Solotech uses a single big roller for just one smooth compression per revolution. The result? You get a 30 to 60% longer life out of your hose. It's a huge difference.
Okay, so let's move on to the second failure point. And this one is a little bit sneakier: waste. And I'm not really talking about big spills here. I'm talking about the slow, steady financial bleed that comes from inaccurate dosing and chemical overfeed.
A lot of pumps, especially diaphragm pumps, they pulse. They don't give you a smooth, steady flow. So to make sure you're getting at least the minimum amount of chemical you need, what do? You crank it up, right? You overfeed chemicals just to be safe because you can't really trust the pump's accuracy, especially at low speeds. And that hits your budget directly and can even mess with the quality of your final product.
Now, because the Solotech gives you more flow with each rotation, its delivery is way smoother, way more consistent. This lets you meter your chemicals so much more precisely, and that usually results in a 2 to 5% reduction in what you're spending on chemicals. Now, 2 to 5% might not sound like a lot, but if you're spending, say, $40,000 a year on chemicals for just one skid, that's up to $2,000 in savings, right there.
And now, for the third failure point, the one that everyone dreads, the one that stops everything dead in its tracks: blockages. It seems so simple, a little plug in the line, but it can kick off this chain reaction of crippling, time-sucking, and sometimes even dangerous events.
Just look at this whole ordeal. With a normal pump that can't run in reverse, a simple blockage is a total shutdown. First, you stop the whole line. Then you got to do the lockout/tagout for safety. Then you're grabbing wrenches, manually breaking flanges, which, let's be honest, almost always means a spill you now have to deal with. Only then can you actually get in there and clear the plug, put it all back together, clean up the mess, and finally, restart production. What should have been a tiny issue just cost you hours. Okay, so we've laid out all these headaches. Now let's talk about the solution. The whole point of the Solotech pump is that it's designed from the ground up to get rid of these three big failures. The whole idea is less to fail, so you get more to flow.
This is where it all just clicks into place. Remember that chronic wear from a dozen different parts? Solved. Because there are no valves or seals to break in the first place. That inaccurate dosing and chemical waste we talked about? Solved. That's thanks to the single, smooth 360-degree compression that gives you total control. And those awful production-killing blockages? You just flip a switch and run the pump in reverse to clear it. A problem that took hours now takes maybe 2 minutes.
So here's the official definition, if you're curious. At its heart, yeah, the Solotech is a peristaltic pump. But the real innovation, the secret sauce, is that single roller and the full 360-degree rotation. It's just a really elegant design that leads to this cascade of benefits, from efficiency all the way to reliability.
All right, let's get to the bottom line, the Uptime Payback. This is where we translate all those cool design features into the language that really matters on the plant floor, the real-world math that makes an investment like this make sense. This table really lays it out pretty clearly. Your current pump might be costing you around $3,000 a year in operating expenses when you add everything up. With a Solotech, that number drops way down, saving you somewhere between $1,200 and $2,000 a year. And when you tack on the savings from not overfeeding chemicals, the pump pretty much pays for itself in just 1 to 2 years. And this quote right here, it just sums the whole thing up perfectly. It's so tempting to just look at the initial price tag, but that pump that's cheaper on day one can easily end up costing you $1,000, $2,000, even $3,000 more every single year. You have to look at the total cost of ownership. It's the only number that matters.
So, we'll end with a question for you. Just think about it for a second. In your own facility, what is the true annual cost of your pump maintenance, your chemical waste, and all that unexpected downtime? Really thinking about that number. Well, that's the first step to changing it. Thanks for watching.